All right, Jim Tompkins, welcome back to Beyond Fulfillment.
Thank you, Dave. Great to be here.
Yes, sir. Great to have you back. We're in the middle of summer right now. And Jim, you have been a frequent collaborator here on the podcast over the past couple of years. And we are typically talking supply chain, but today's episode is much different. We're talking all about AI. And you and I have discussed this at length, and you've really gone deep into AI. So can you just tell us, where is all of this headed?
Well, I tell you, Dave, it's an exciting journey. And I think there's four phases of AI. The first phase of AI really began around 2018, if you can believe that. That's when the first hint that AI was going to be something is when Google brought BERT into its Google search engine. And Google used BERT in 2018. And what we had is the ability to now kind of put the old Google on steroids. And so we could do much more than we could do. And then in 2002, they changed to PALM for real searching and real AI. And so we just had an unbelievable Google experience. And so that's phase one, is when we use AI as a tool. And we use it to make our life a little easier because we have more power in search. Level two, however, is we upgraded AI and we went from AI as a tool to AI as a worker. It's like hiring an assistant. And so we could go to level two AI and we say, edit this for me. Here's a question I got from my customer. Please respond to this. In November of 22, ChatGPT came out. It was a large language model. Several months later, Google came out with Gemini, the first version of Gemini. And Gemini and ChatGPT are real AI now. And we were really making a use of AI as a worker. Level three, then, is when AI went from being a worker to being a partner. So we went from somebody who worked for us to someone who worked with us. And we were on the same level. Starting in the summer of 2023, AI gained strategic reasoning. It wasn't just responding to tasks. It had strategic reasoning. It had memory. It remembered what you searched yesterday and referred back to it. The first real breakthrough for Google there was Gemini 2 in 2025, where we had agentic AI, we had autonomy, and we had memory. Then when we go to level 4, we see Google took the next step and they went to Gemini 3, that's in 2026, where they not only had autonomy and memory, but they also had execution and multiple agent collaboration. And so what we see is it went from a tool to a worker to a real partner. Now the question one asks is, where are we today? Most companies are someplace between 2 and 3. We're finding some firms getting up into the 2.7s and 2.8s and really getting closer and closer to being a true partner mode, but that's unusual. The speed of change, and what we had is the capability of AI grew substantially. What we found is that the AI capability was accelerating, and now a trajectory that's almost heading like a rocket ship straight to the moon. It's just really going well. And that resulted in companies starting now to think about labor market restructuring, where we have a large scale changes in how labor is organized, the roles they play, and how this works out. We found in a lot of companies, we had this guy that was really valuable. He was the head of procurement. We were paying him $2 million a year. But you know what? He really only was that $2 million a year employee 2 months out of the year. Well, what we saw as we get into phase 4 is companies are saying, we only need him 2 months a year. Let's hire him 2 months a year. And so there was a new fractional mindset as to how we could get this labor done. And so how did the phase 4 come about? It's a combination of AI capability, labor market restructuring, and fractional expertise. And so together, these three things form what I call the AI extended enterprise. Phase 4 is achieved when an organization reaches the escape velocity, the moment that people stop asking the question, I wonder if I should use AI? And instead they say, how do we reorganize the entire company around AI? And so it's an unbelievably cool time for us to be living with the explosion of AI. Very cool time.
If you're still trying to hire locally for every role on your team, you're leaving serious money on the table. Ocean's Talent places AI fluent executive operators. We're talking finance, marketing, operations, EAs, fully vetted, full-time, and dedicated to your business. These aren't freelancers or shared resources. They're U.S. caliber talent at a fraction of the cost, backed by a 3-month guarantee. And right now, Beyond Fulfillment listeners get $1,000 off their first hire. Go to oceanstalent.com/Dave to claim it. Okay. Now, Jim, you talk about an AI-enabled enterprise. Like, what is that and what makes it different from any other company?
Well, when we talk about the AI-enabled enterprise, there's two key things we got to think about. The AI agents become reliable enough so that they can orchestrate their own workflows. And so it does happen automatically. You, in fact, don't even know some agents have been invented. Agents have invented agents that are now helping agents. The enterprise adoption hits escape velocity, and companies realize that they can get along with a substantially fewer number of employees. Now, it depends on the type of industry and the types of jobs, but the reality is the guys that are making between $100,000 and $200,000 a year, wearing a white shirt, sitting at a desk, those people are going to be gone. And so there's going to be a massive change in where the headcount works, and companies are not going to need full-time analysts, full-time strategy people, and they're going to do it on a fractional basis. And so we're going to have leadership really focus on what do we need to do next. And then AI is going to enable that talent by having the data already available. You're going to do a new network study, and it's going to take 12 minutes to download the data. You'll have all the data. You want to redesign your warehouse. It's done because the data is already there. The data has been captured. We're going to find that we're going to be working with external organizations to provide talent, and that we're going to find, and I love this phrase, we're going to become bigger than our payroll. We're going to look like a company of 1,000 employees, and we're only going to have 300. How does this happen? Well, it's called the rentability threshold. It's when something occurs that it becomes cheaper to rent than it is to buy. In my company, I had 3 full-time programmers working on my sales funnel, my marketing, and my communications with my marketplace. I was spending $100,000 a year in 1999. Some guy named Salesforce came out with a CRM package that was a major multi-tenant, subscription-based, browser-delivered enterprise application. And I bought the Salesforce CRM for $18,000 a year. I fired my 3 programmers, and what I found is that it was cheaper to rent the software than it was to buy the programmers. That's the rentability threshold. Has that ever happened again? We were running everything on SaaS, and so software as a service became the norm. It no longer became the exception. And so we had a lot of software as a service. Things were going well. And in 2006, my head of IT came to me and said, Jim, we got a problem. We need to buy another server. I said, oh, wow, what's it going to cost? He said, around $300,000. I said, oh, wow. I hadn't put that in the budget. Is there any way we can get around this? He said, well, this little outfit, I don't know if it's going to make it or not. It's called AWS. I don't know if you ever heard of it. I said, well, yeah, that's an Amazon thing. They created cloud computing. They had the first public cloud, and you could rent space on that cloud, and you only paid for what you used. And so cloud computing in 2006 made storage rentable. It made computing rentable. And so what we did is we rented, we did not buy. Wow. That was mind-blowing. I had the entire first floor of my large building on my campus was for IT. You know what we did with that first floor? We turned it into a health club because it had good air conditioning. But I mean, the money I spent for that, Dave, you wouldn't believe it.
Hey, let me tell you about Max Capital Hub. If you're an entrepreneur trying to get funding, but your credit's holding you back, these are the people to call. They do business loans, business funding, and they'll actually help you clean up your credit so you qualify for more. They're not just handing you paperwork, their team builds an actual strategy around your business. So if you've been stuck or the bank has told you no, give Max Capital Hub a call or book a free consultation at maxcapitalhub.com. Tell them I sent you. All right. Now, Jim, I hear people debating the topic of where AI should be viewed as like a tool to automate decision-making and executions, and then other people talking about the need for human judgment. So like in your view, where's the boundary line between what AI like should control and where humans are still needed?
Yeah, great question, and one that I've spent quite a bit of time thinking on. AI should handle tasks that are automated. Humans should handle tasks that require judgment. So, for example, where should we use AI? We should use AI for information retrieval, for pattern recognition, for scenario generation, for summarization and synthesis, for optimization, and for modeling. Those all require us to automate the processing, and they give us a correct answer. To the contrary, AI allows us to handle those tasks, but AI is not worth a darn and handle what I would call more judgmental or reasoning. Human judgment is required when we're dealing with things that have values or priorities or trade-offs or consequences. Kind of a practical rule that I like to think about is if the question you're asking has a right answer, then you should use AI. If the question you're asking has a responsible answer, then you should use the human. And I think that's how we should lay the boundary, and that's how we should think about things. And so it's interesting in my mind to ask that. I ask that question probably 20 times a day now. Is this something I should do or something I should do? And I get some skirmishes, but most of the time I agree with myself now. So it's kind of interesting to see how that evolves.
Okay. All right. So, Jim, many people also have concerns about AI with respect to data quality, cybersecurity, governance, hallucinations. What's your view on all of that?
Well, cybersecurity, governance, data quality, hallucination, extremely important. You got bad data, AI is going to give you bad answers. If you have a cybersecurity issue, you're up the creek. If you got poor governance, you're up the creek. If you're getting hallucinations, AI is giving you answers that aren't true, you can't function because you got to trust AI. And so these are big issues. And so all these issues need to be understood and addressed. Now, the problem is some people are saying, oh, well, hallucinations and, oh, well, cybersecurity and, oh, the government's going to pass laws and we're not going to be... Excuse me, that's stupid. These are issues, but it's our job to address these issues. What we need to do is we need to have the organization that has the capability, has the power to address the quality of data so we don't have hallucinations. We need to have in place the power of the governance so that we can control the security of our data. We need to make sure that when we're using AI, that we give it the fuel we need. The reality is AI really must work for you as soon as your competition figures it out. And so it's not an issue of, oh, I'm not going to do it because my data bad, or I'm not going to do it because my governance. No, you are going to do it because your competition is figuring out, and your competition is mopping the floor with you. And so it's not something that's just kind of casual and going to happen. I see companies that take a very casual attitude to things like that. It kind of remembers me of a couple great companies. Do we remember Blockbuster? Bankrupt 2010. Do we remember Kodak? Oh my goodness. That was the greatest firm in the world for industrial engineers to work. Bankrupt 2012. Toys R Us. My goodness, the first mega store for toys. Bankrupt 2017. And if it's not companies, it's products. This family lived next door to this old guy. And the family kind of watched after the old guy. So one afternoon, the mother made cookies and she gave it to her daughter and says, "Sweetie, take these cookies over to Mr. Jones." So she went over to Mr. Jones' house and rang the doorbell. And she said, "I brought you cookies, Mr. Jones." He said, "Oh, thank you so much. Come in, Nancy, have a seat. Would you like some milk and cookies with me?" "Share." So he pours her some milk, gives her a cookie. And they're sitting there having cookies and milk, having a discussion. And guess what happened? The phone rang. And Mr. Jones stood up and walked across the room and answered a phone that was attached to the wall and said hello. He spoke for a minute, put the phone down. He said, "I have to go. I have Nancy here. She brought me cookies. We're having cookies and milk." And so they finished the discussion, and Nancy left. And Nancy went back home and said, "Mom, Mr. Jones has a phone attached to his wall." "Why would you attach a phone to the wall?" He had to get up from the table and go answer the phone. Well, you're supposed to have your phone right here. I mean, just answer. You don't get up and walk across the room. Why would anybody have a landline telephone? It just doesn't make sense. So what we see is these people that are sitting there and grinding their hands and say, "Oh, AI data and hallucinations and cybersecurity and government. Oh, poor me." Well, they're the 2026 version of the buggy whip thinkers. And what they want to do is they want to protect the past at the expense of the future. So I want to tell these folks, pull your knickers up and go make something happen. Because you will do AI, or you will be the next landline phone, the next Blockbusters. You're not going to make it. And so I think it's that serious. We can't let people just put forth this negative stuff. So yeah, I think we got to be careful with those folks, because they're going to allow companies to have an excuse not to move forward, and they are going to be the reason the company fails.
Quick word from today's partner, NordVPN. Building a business means working from anywhere. Coffee shops, airports, hotel Wi-Fi. NordVPN encrypts your connection and protects your data in over 100 countries, all with one tap. Grab the link in the show notes for a big discount and a 30-day money-back guarantee. Now back to the show. So, Jim, in an AI-enabled enterprise, things are going to be moving very quickly. How do leaders build the mental agility needed to stay current without burning out?
Yeah. So the word resilience, we've all got, since COVID, we all use the word resilience a lot. But the word resilience existed way, way, way before COVID. Resilience is a term from physics. And in physics, resilience, if you have resilience of 1 point, what that means, if I hold a ball right here and I drop the ball, and the ball goes down, hits the surface, and comes right back up and touches the bottom of my hand, that's 1.0. If you drop the ball and it goes down and comes up halfway, that's 0.5 resilient. And so what we need to be able to do is we need to maintain the mental agility by being able to bounce. And what we need to be able to do is to be resilient. And so, and is that going to be frustrating and agitating? Yes. But what we got to do is we got to do that without burnout. And the way you do that without burnout is by practicing and by scenario planning. And so what I want to do is I want to spend some time every single day, and I want to do what I call what-if drills. Because guess what? Some of those things I can hypothesize will happen. And so what we're thinking on here, and you and I have already talked about this, but it's applicable here too, it's not about optimization. It's about optimality. And so the way to avoid burnout and to be able to handle this mental agility is by being ready for the surprises before they surprise you. And if we can do that, be ready for them, we're not going to have burnout. We're going to be able to handle them. Say, I've already thought of this alternative. That's scenario number 27, and I have a plan to do this, this, and this. And it's going to take less of me emotionally because I'm going to have it pre-planned. So when you're looking at how you're going to do something, what's the approach you're going to take? You got to be built in the optionality so that when things change, you can change with it without going, crazy and being frustrated.
Okay. All right. Last question here, Jim. What advice would you give companies and their leadership going forward?
Hang on to your hats. It's a wild ride. There is no such thing as steady state. Things are changing in this field every week, sometimes every day. And so we need to understand that disruption is the new normal. We got to expect the unexpected. It's like the last question. We have to prepare for it. We have to understand something's coming. We need not to be surprised by things happening quickly because we know that's going to happen. We got to get ready for one of the wildest rides in the history of mankind. There's never been a time where things happen like they do. I mean, if you go on a 2-week vacation, you come back, you might not recognize your job anymore. And so you really got to figure out how we're going to deal with that. The pace of change, because AI is going to boggle your mind. And so what we need to do is we need to take a deep breath and we got to press on. If we resist change, we will fail. We cannot resist change. We need to be ready for change. We got to embrace change, and we got to be ready to turn this into an unbelievable competitive advantage. The challenge is tough. The rewards are great because there's going to be a lot more Blockbusters out there, and we don't want to be one of them. And so we got to maintain the pace and stay on it because AI is like nothing we've ever touched before. It's that powerful.
Okay. Love the insights, Jim. As always, it's been a pleasure. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Dave. Good to see you.